I'm Taylor.
And I'm Nick.
And you're watching Budget Build Garage.
So on this episode, we're going to install our new disc brake setup. We bought this kit from Right Stuff. It was on a big ass sale, which is why we ended up with the cross-fueled and slotted. The reason we went with this one really though is because we wanted these super duper nifty braided steel flex lines, which are awesome. Came with the backing plate, brackets, wheel bearings, seals, nuts, bolts. It came with the spindle, which we threw on the car in the last video when we did the suspension, and powder coated caliper, which is powder coated somewhat okay. It's like, I've seen better and worse powder coating. That's cool. 9-inch booster, and came with the proportioning valve and everything. We're gonna go ahead and install all of this, get it on the car, get the car back on the road. It's gonna be awesome. We are gonna start installing the backing plate and the bracket. There is a left and there is a right, just FYI. It's pretty obvious which one's which. They won't go the other way. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get that installed. As well as the steering arm that goes on too. Honestly, I mean, this thing is relatively easy to install. Except that I can't get the box end wrench on that, which sucks. This one's ratcheting, which means I have to get a different wrench. So I'm not going to turn that one like a caveman. That's really it for the backing plate and this guy. You want to torque these things down. You know that I read the directions, and the directions were like, oh, torque it down to torque spec, but didn't actually give a torque spec. And then it's like, look up your torque spec. So, look up your torque spec, or just do it, you know, so it's really tight. A lot of people will use like red thread lock on these if you know you're never going to take this off. Most people aren't once it's already on there, so feel free to use some of that. I'm not gonna, because realistically we're going to tear this thing down like 5 times. Because that's just what we do. We do everything out of order because we're not smart. But really next up is, I'll actually, really tighten these. And then we'll go back and put the wheel bearing in the rotor, and we'll put the rotor on.
So we're going to go ahead and pack the bearing inside the hub now. Make sure you have your bearings properly greased. That's very important, otherwise you're going to burn out your bearings. So what you're going to want to do, take a bunch of grease, grease up the inside, grease up the bearing a little more. Toss it in properly. You're going to take your seal, and we're going to go ahead and tap this into place.
Good. What if I have a smaller size that would fit the other way?
Alright, so I fucked it up, so Nick had to come in and repair it. Alright, we're in. We're going to go ahead and throw the hub onto the spindle now.
Cool. That piece of cardboard seems so much.
I believe it. I installed the sink the other day.
And you needed cardboard?
Yeah.
I feel like you did it wrong. I am moving the bearing even more. Even though we packed them, I'm pretty much one of those guys that thinks there's no such thing as too much lubrication in any aspect of your life.
I like how you looked at me in the eyes.
Yeah, right in the eyes. Like,
damn. That is looking really good.
It's basically done. Like, we can probably just start driving it.
This will rotate.
Oh yeah, look, this thing's got a cool little keyway.
Oh.
Slides on, all
Okay.
pretty like. So you're not actually tightening this thing, you're just trying to set the bearing, kind of like preload, I guess you'd say. So it feels awesome. Start feeling slight drag. And then just back it off a bit. And that's perfect.
Just like on a skateboard.
Yeah, just like, actually, alright, just like on a skateboard. You could wiggle it back and forth. There should be no back and forth play in it though. So it should be tight enough that it won't go back and forth, but loose enough that it spins completely freely. And it doesn't hurt to do it a few times if you're worried about it. Like I said, put a little into it till you can feel it drag. Then back it off to like, cool. Just enough to get to the next hole. For the cotter pin. These are one-time use only. Do not reuse these. Slide it through there. Privilege is hard, give all the grease. Where you want to go. Bend these bad boys opposite of each other so they're not right next to each other so you can't be pulled out. Then grab your makeshift hammer because that's all these things are really good for. Just hammer these bad boys down. Yay. So when they ship these discs, they usually come coated in some sort of oil to keep them from rusting. You need to get that stuff off. You don't want to run the brake pads on it. It will get them all greasy. They won't stop. They get kind of gross and nasty. You can also get hot spots on the rotors and stuff from where the grease is on the pad. So just make sure you hit them with some brake cleaner. You can even hit them with some Dawn or something. You actually wash them. Just, you know, blow them off of the air. Just put a bit of this stuff anywhere it contacts so it'll keep it from squeaking. Yeah! Oh, my bad. I knew that was going to happen perfectly like that. Also, when you install the caliper,
What? What's the problem, buddy?
This is that side's caliper.
Motherfucker.
No, it's okay. I'll show you why it's that side's caliper. So the air bleeder should be facing up. No matter what you're doing, any set of brakes, these things are facing up. It's like this, it was down, it needs to be like that. So I just need to grab the other caliper. It was like, I knew it was going too well. It was like, nah. You're gonna do this backwards and look dumb, and then you're not gonna go on. Yeah, Julie did it too, didn't he?
Guess I'm getting pizza.
Budget Bill Gross, not brought to you in 4K. Alright, so it's a new day, 3 weeks later, because when we were installing this, Taylor forgot to charge his battery. His camera died. So instead of charging the battery like a normal guy, he says, let's go buy a 4K camera. And I'm like, that's the greatest idea ever. And he's like, cool, can you pay half? And I was like, that's the worst idea ever. So then we negotiated it down, and somehow I ended up giving him $100. And now we're shooting in 4K. Awesome. So back to the actual car though. We got everything on. Everything went on really good. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about this style of brake. This caliper is based on kind of what you would have gotten back then. This is like a stock type caliper. The way this works is it mounts on these pins. This is a slide style caliper. So what happens is when you push your brakes, there's a piston in this side. Just the one piston. It's kind of big. It's actually a really easy system. When you push the brakes on it, it pulls the whole caliper over and it moves on these pins back and forth. So it self-centers on the rotor itself when it grabs. And then once you release, it'll actually center itself back, which is really good. There's not a lot of adjustment to it, which is kind of one of the good perks about this system. All that's really left to do at this point is put the flex line on. Once we put the flex line on, we'll start dealing with some of the hard lines and the booster and everything, and we'll show you how to bench bleed that. This kit with the cross-drilled and slotted rotors, we got it because it was on sale. To be honest, I don't really believe that on this style it does a whole lot, except kind of these grooves here kind of clean everything. They clean the pads as they go around, but I like these, the braided steel lines. And this style is what's called a banjo fitting. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a hole in this bolt. Right there. You see that? Cool. That goes into this ring here. There's a hole in this ring. So it flows through this bolt on the bottom, and the pressure activates that piston. That's the way this style works. So, super easy. You got these awesome copper washers. Slide it in. There's really no up and no down. So whichever way the line wants to go, put it in that way. Because it's going to want to come up like that. So if it's got a natural bend in it, let it do what it wants to do. Also, before you fully tighten this down, and before you put this guy in to lock it in place up here, you should put your wheels somewhat straight, because that'll be kind of your standard position when you're driving most of the time. Alright, once you've clipped that in, make sure you turn left and right, full lock. Make sure there's no kinking at all in the brake hose. Suspension is at full droop, so it's going to change a little bit at ride height. If you're worried about that, and if it doesn't have the greatest path, put a jack under it to compress the suspension at ride height, and then back and forth with the wheel again. Make sure there's no kinks in that line. But that looks awesome. So the other thing is too, though, once you put a nasty ass cam and a crazy ass motor in there, it's not going to make any vacuum, so these aren't going to work, and we're going to ditch them anyways when we go all full drag race with the blower and everything. That's going to be super cool. Let's make that happen. But for now, we can get a measurement off of this push rod here, because this is what's bolting to the actual pedal. So it could be a rough measurement, because we're going to have to adjust it. We're not going to assume this one's right. Oops. That's 6 inches. Then we have this cool guy right here. So this is an extender. I feel like I was just talking about these and not really making any sense, so if anyone needed to learn anything from that, I'm sorry. Because it probably didn't happen.
You didn't get any information from me.
I want to make sure there's enough adjustment in and out so we won't bottom that out. So we're going to have to cut this rod because it's like super long.
Whoa. That's my breath. It's almost cold out here.
Oh no, right? California for you. It's fucking blistering 58 degrees. Just feel like a dick every time, like, oh, I'm cold. It's like snowing everywhere but here.
Get a short sleeve shirt on.
Haven't worn a jacket at all in like 2 years. I don't even know.
Don't even own one?
Yeah, I think that one's one. It's all gross. It's been on a pile it's been sitting on there for years. So the master cylinder and booster is in. Brakes are on down there. Really, that's the end of the fun, awesome, easy stuff. The next thing we're going to talk about is the part usually people skip over, when they're thinking about this. And that's the hard lines, the brake lines. This guy right here bolts to the frame. Everything converges on this. All the brake lines to that side, the back, and this side bolted to this, bolted to the frame. The new proportioning valve's up here. So if you want, you could try and make this one, bolt to the frame and kind of copy all that, and then you might be able to use these again. But they weren't the right fittings at all for this, so I kind of got rid of that idea. Plus, I kind of like the way it looks up here, and it came with a cool bracket, so that's gone. But instead of making all new lines, because most of these are actually good, we did check them out. If you live somewhere where it gets really cold and snows a lot, you may want to look at them, you may want to replace them all. But we don't need to do that. We're going to do the easy thing. We went and bought one of these. This is a joiner for inverted flares. You got to look up which sides you need, or just take a fitting in with you. Connect that to the brake lines, and then if you want, you might get away with being able to use these again. This, however, has 3 ports, so one for each side of the fronts, and then one that goes to the back. We're just going to join these and build new brake lines from here, just down to about here, which you won't be able to see on the frame, unfortunately, because it's kind of tight in there. We'll try and get a shot right now of it. But yeah, so we're going to do that. We're going to build some brake lines for this. All right, when you're making your brake lines for the kit, you have a couple different options. You can order the actual disc brake kit brake lines from someone like Right Stuff or National Parts Depot or something. Or you can get one of these, which was enough to do like 2 whole cars, which is kind of nice. Bend it in any shape you want, cut it and flare it yourself. That's kind of a fun way to do it. Or you can buy one of these from your local auto parts store. It was straight, but I've already started kind of mangling it while I got bored, while Taylor was doing something. This comes straight. They come pre-flared. This one we had lying around. It wasn't the right flare on the other one, so I've already cut that off. And I will flare this in and do that. That's only enough for one though. The other 2 I made out of this stuff. Well, kind of. I've started to make it out of this stuff. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get to that. Earlier, I've already started kind of mangling this into place. They make a lot of different tools to help you bend these and move these and put them into perfect angles. And if you want to go that route, you should go that route. I don't do that, however. I only use pretty much this tool. It's kind of just a plier, lays in there, and it gets you whatever bend you need, but you're doing it yourself. Or I actually just grab it and bend it. To be honest, this stuff is super pliable. It's actually really forgiving. You really don't need to worry about screwing it up because most of the time, they look good. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going for perfection, then yeah, by all means do whatever you'd like to do. But honestly, the factory ones didn't look great, so I'm not too worried about it. Alright, there you go. There's my beautiful brake line. It looks wonderfully awful. Everyone's looking at it like, what the fuck? Who bends a brake line like that? I do. This guy. So one last thing. Like I was saying before, you're going to leave the last bit of flaring around it so it's actually on the fitting. So once you've tightened it, go ahead and back it off and then re-tighten it again. It'll go a little bit farther because it's actually molding to the fitting that's inside this. That way it won't leak when you finally fire it up and put pressure through it. Now that I have made my super perfect lines and they're all bent super nice and evenly, and I didn't just do it really quick, we need to take it all apart. We need to bench bleed this guy right here. Once we bench bleed the master cylinder, we can hook it all back up and run the fluid through it, bleed the brakes, and we're done. So really the hard part is done. Oh, and check for leaks once we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, pour some fluid in it, and then we will bench bleed it. Right. So we're going to bench bleed this guy right here. Usually people do them before they put him in the car, but since we had to build the brake lines, we wanted to go ahead and install it. It is installed now. We're not going to bother taking it off. We're going to do it on the car, which is no problem. One thing to remember is you do want this thing to be level, so we're going to jack the back up until this gets level, and we'll go ahead and start it. These cute little things are what they gave us to install into here to bleed this thing. These are junk. Luckily, that's not my first time. I have actual fittings laying around, which is good. If not, those would have worked, but I mean, they're just kind of chintzy. Yeah, these have to be sitting in brake fluid. So what we're going to do is when you push the pedal, it's going to force the fluid through all the passages in this and push all the air through these hoses and back into itself. So you're just trying to get all the air out, basically. But if you don't do that, you'll be bleeding your brakes forever. Now we're going to jack the back up to get this a little more level. You don't necessarily really have to do it. It just does. It bleeds faster like that. And it's as easy as putting a jack under the rear, so we're just going to do that really quick. Oh yeah, so brake fluid will eat through your paint like super duper quick, so try not to spill any.
What is it made out of?
Fucking unicorn stuff.
Stuff?
You can't make that shit up. I believe it is unicorn blood. Julie, you want to hop in the car and push on the brakes a bunch?
Okay.
Also, watch out for that light.
Yeah. Alright, so just push them all the way in, and then all the way out, then all the way in, and all the way out. Slower. See all the cool bubbles coming up?
See all the cool bubbles.
Well, what else do you want me to describe them as?
You're doing good.
Yeah, Julie,
A little slower.
you're basically a mechanic now. You think Julie's gonna get mad at us when I tell her I think the reason this is taking so long is this one's just not quite tight enough, so it's sucking air in from the outside?
No, it should be okay.
So the bleeding went well. There's no more bubbles through here. It looks wonderful. It takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth it. Otherwise, when you're trying to bleed them at the wheels, you'll be doing it all day, and you'll never get your pedal right. Honestly, at this point, all we need to do is put it back together, bleed them at the wheels, and like we're good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get to that. All right, so we are in. We are buttoned up. We need to bleed the brakes at the wheels, but I mean, we've shown you that before. I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera as well as throwing the fender back on. And this thing is pretty much ready to go. This will probably be our last El Camino video for a little bit. We got some other stuff we're working on. We're gonna do some work on my daily driver, and we got a lot of stuff coming up. So that's it for this episode. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave some comments. You know, tell me what you think, tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like. Was this informative? Hopefully it helped somebody do something sometime. Cool. We'll catch you next time.